What's up, everyone? Welcome to a late night edition of the Jam Session. It is your host, your one and only Hollywood Hathaway. I'm actually by myself tonight. This is a late night. It's almost 1 o'clock my time, 1 a.m. to be exact. My time. So my boy Mo is in the bed asleep. This was unplanned. This was unscripted. But this is a this is a session that's been weighing heavy on my heart for the past couple of days. Just through some of my own personal devotional time that I want to speak on that has heavily impacted my life, a good way and a bad way. I think we've all encountered this topic that I'm going to speak on tonight, which is our intuition. What I mean by intuition, some people call it if you're a spiritual person, some people call it the Holy Spirit. It's also known as the inner man. Some people call it that sixth sense, that gut feeling, or that feeling of something told me so moment. Whatever it is that you call it, that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. And I feel like this topic is important because a lot of people miss out on blessings or they put themselves in awkward situations, life-changing situations. I've been guilty of that myself that can alter the direction of their life. So I just want to talk about it a little bit. I'm pretty sure my boy Mo is going to want to do a part two, but I figured out I need to get this out tonight. I was going to wait and do it tomorrow, later on today, but I was like, no, I can't go to bed without getting this off my heart. I have so much to say right now, and I just kind of feel like I'm about to burst with information. So hopefully I can get this message out across that with clarity in ways that you guys understand, and most of all, in ways that you can apply to your life and change your life. Um, I'm going to give out some pointers. I'm going to share some testimonies in my own personal life. So let's just get on this journey. It's not going to be a long podcast. I say that uh, unsurely, but I'm trying to not make it too long because it's late and I need to get to sleep. But I got to get to this. So let's get started. What is the intuition? By definition, intuition is the ability to understand something immediately without the need for conscious reasoning. It's like the know without knowing. Like I said, we've all probably encountered this at some point of our life where there's a heavy tug on our spirit regarding a certain situation or a person or relationship, whatever the case may be. There's something that tugs on the inside of us that's telling us to do something or not to do something, to trust this person or not to trust this person. And we've all encountered that at some point of our lives, and I think it's important. A lot of times we ignore that, and we shouldn't ignore that because that's our conscience telling us to do something, to respond to a certain situation in a good way or a bad way. It feels as if there's like that, like I said, this strong internally pulling on you that's saying, yes, do this or don't do this. And in whichever direction that is pulling you, don't ignore it. That's your intuition. Your intuition is trying to get you something or save you from something um, that can harm you down the road. Some people say, like, they look when they hear the word blessing, for example. A lot of times, we tie the word blessing to something that we're gonna gain, whether it's monetary, whatever the case may be. We're gonna receive something, but a blessing can also be keeping you from something, keeping you from some sort of harm, keeping you from entering into a relationship that's gonna not lead you anywhere but a broken heart. So a blessing in the sense that it doesn't necessarily have to be something that we gain. It can also be something that is kept from us in a good way, in a way that it could harm us. So when you the next time when you hear the word blessing or you use the word blessing, just don't think about it in a way as in the sense of I'm receiving something. A blessing can also be something in which I don't receive, keep myself away from. Now, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take a moment and reflect back on the time in which your intuition spoke to you about a certain situation. All right. We'll take a moment to do that. And as you're thinking, I want you to think about this. How did you respond to the situation? I know you felt it on the inside. Your spirit was telling you to do something or not to do something. Like, how did you respond to the situation? Think about it for a second. Did you apply what you were feeling, or did you oppose what your intuition told you to do? You know, a lot of times when we face those situations, we try to kind of take on the situations by ourselves. And one of the things that I've learned throughout my life is anytime I have a heavy intuition about a certain situation, I highly advise you guys to seek some sort of advice, seek wisdom. And what I mean by that is find someone that knows you very well, but also find that person that's going to speak the truth to you. Don't find someone that's going to be a yes man to you. Find someone who's going to tell you, no, you shouldn't do this, or you shouldn't date this person, or you shouldn't take this job, or you shouldn't buy this car, whatever the case may be. Find someone that's going to speak the truth into you, and they're going to give you logical explanation as to why you should or should not do a certain thing. Like I said, it could be a blessing in disguise if they tell you no. Um, and that's the thing. A lot of times we don't want to hear the word no, but I feel like the word no can save us a lot of time from a lot of heartache that we bring up on ourselves because, and I've been guilty of that. I don't like to disappoint people. I used to not want to disappoint people, but I've ultimately learned that I'm responsible for my life, number one. And if that means telling someone no, um, then so be it. You can't please everyone. You're not going to please everyone, and to put that much pressure on yourself to people please is not only not fair to you, but it's also not fair to them. And why do I say it's not fair to them? Because like people should not expect everyone to come to your rescue, more or less to say. Uh, it's okay to tell someone no, and with all good reason. That's your choice to tell someone no. If you don't feel right about a certain situation, don't do it, regardless of how they feel. If you personally do not feel comfortable about the decision you're about to make, then do not do it. Um, I've heard numerous stories of people who went against their intuition because they were afraid to tell someone no because they didn't want to hurt their feelings, and ultimately, they're the ones who end up getting hurt. They're the ones who ended up with the heartache. They're the ones who ended up with the financial debt. They're the ones who ended up with the loss, more to say, because they were too afraid to say no because they wanted to please people instead of being true to themselves about the situation. Um, with that, it's important. Like I said, it's important that we seek wisdom behind whatever feelings that we have because a lot of times we tend to second guess ourselves or we tend to talk ourselves out of a blessing that God is trying to get to us. Uh, I I want you guys to think about that too. How many times have you talked yourself out of something that you knew deep down in your spirit that you were supposed to do? Like you start thinking about the what ifs. What if this goes wrong? What if I can't do this? What if I have enough money? But what if you do? You know what I mean? Um, we've been guilty of that. I've been guilty of that. I've talked myself out of numerous things, and over the years, I've learned that fear is always going to creep up in your mind, especially if it's something that's going to impact a lot of people in a positive way. Um, negativity tends to rise when it always seems that way. That negativity tends to rise and clouds our mind, our thoughts when it involves life changing result for other people. For example, I'm a health and fitness expert. Um, um, I've been involved in the health and fitness industry for a long time. That's been my career for years. For you guys that know me, I've always been involved in some sort of health and wellness, fitness, whatever you want to call it, strength and conditioning. But I know a lot of times that, um, for instance, like this podcast. When I first started to do this podcast, there was a lot of doubt within my mind that um, arose because I was like, well, what if people don't want to hear, or what if I can't get enough people on the podcast, or what if I have enough topics? It was just what if, what if, what if, what if, what if. But I've learned that when you ignore, even in spite, those doubts are going to pop up. You can't ignore that. Those doubts are always going to pop up. But this is what you have to do. You have to continue to push through the doubts because they're not going to stop coming. And what I've learned is the more you push through the doubts, the louder your testimony becomes, the more confidence you gain. Because as you push forward, less doubts tend to affect you. You know, you start hearing, oh, thank you for doing this podcast. It really touched my life. That just builds more layers to your confidence as you kind of block out those doubts. And there's a quote by Dr. King, Dr. Martin Luther King. He says that if you take the first step in faith, you don't have to see the whole staircase. Just take the first step. I'm going to read that again. Dr. Martin Luther King had a quote where he says, take this first step in faith. You don't have to see the whole staircase. Just take the first step. And a lot of times we fall guilty to that. We tend to want to see the entire staircase because we want to know, is this going to be a waste of our time? What's the possibilities of me failing? We think of all the negative and it blocks out the positive. And I'll tell you, there's so much more positive at the end than there is the negative. There's always going to, like I said, there's always going to be some sort of negative noise to keep you from fulfilling your purpose in life, or from starting that business you want to start, or going after that degree you always wanted to go after, or asking that girl that you want to marry. Whatever the case may be, there's always going to be some level of fear. And fear is the ultimate hindrance to a lot of people's destiny. So don't let fear, don't allow your needing to know the entire plan stop you from taking the first step. Just go in faith. Just take that first step. And I promise you, I'm telling you from experience, I'm going to share some stories here later, that if you take that first step, everything else tends to line up. Everything else will fall into place. Just take the first step. But once you take the first step, the second step becomes easier. The third step becomes easier. The fourth step becomes easier. And next thing you know, you're no longer walking. Now you're jogging. And then you're no longer jogging. Now you're running. So just take that first step. Why is that important? This is important because you don't want to miss out or mess up opportunities or situations that have been presented to you. You would never, ever, 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 ever have all the pieces of the puzzle at one time. And I think God does that on purpose. I think that God allows us to he presents us with one piece of the puzzle to our goal, because during that one piece, there's a lot of other factors that he's developing within us. Character, our knowledge, our relationships. There's a lot of elements that go along with putting each piece of that puzzle together. But as you continue to move forward, more pieces of that puzzle will come. The finances will come. The relationships will come. The confidence will come. All those things that you may be lacking initially, they will come with time. The key to it is listening to the intuition and taking that first step. Let me give you an example. So through my own experiences, and I'm gonna share some of my stories with about my personal life, about listening to my intuition. I'll share a good one and a bad one. Through my own experiences and from just various stories I've read, I'm a big Bible reader. I love to read the Bible and other books, but the Bible is one of my favorite books to read. That I've learned that obeying that inner voice, like I said, the inner voice, the intuition, whatever you want to call it, the Holy Spirit, that sixth sense, that gut feeling, that something told me so, whatever you want to call it. Whenever you listen to it or you ignore it, it always leads to what I call the three P's. And those three P's are prosperity, peace, and protection. And what I mean by that, I mean, in the sense that God would, in protection wise, in the sense that God will not allow you to fail, being that you took that first step in faith. I'm gonna go over each one of these P's again. I'll tell you what these are again: prosperity, peace, and protection. This is what I call the three P's. This is what I saw throughout. This is kind of like a commonality that I saw all throughout stories that I've read in the Bible and other books, and in my own personal life. When I've obeyed or ignored that inner voice, the intuition. Prosperity. What I mean by prosperity, there is always some level of significant financial gain through your act of obedient faith. Um, so, whenever your intuition tells you to do something, and you do it, in my experience, it always came with some level of financial gain, whether it's small, short term, long term. There's always been some sort of financial gain whenever I've listened to the intuition. Peace. There's always an inner peace within knowing that you made the right decision. And God will provide you confirmation that you made the right decision as well. Um, it says in, let me see, let me find the scripture real quick. That, what is it? Um, Proverbs 10:22. There's a verse that says, the blessings of the Lord makes someone rich and adds no sorrow to it. The blessings, which is the prosperity, makes someone rich, also prosperity, and adds no sorrow to it. That's that peace and that's that protection that I was talking about. So whenever I hear those three, prosperity, peace, and protection, it always reminds me of their voice. And if you read the books like the Bible and other stories, um, you'll find that those three P's pop up in the story in a good way or a bad way. Some pros of this, some examples of this is Thomas Edison, um, his consistency of developing the light bulb. Uh, David versus Goliath. That's a great story, great story. Moses in the Red Sea is a great story, and I'm going to share my story real quick about the time when I received my scholarship to get my master's degree from the University of Hawaii. And this is definitely like one of the most vivid stories that I can share with anyone, and I can just recall it like it was yesterday. I'm about obeying that intuition. And it's weird because one thing I left off is like a lot of times your intuition would tell you to do something that does not make sense at all. And this is a prime example what I'm about to share with you about my receiving my scholarship from the University of Hawaii. So It was around 2005. I just finished, you know, getting my bachelor's degree, and I was looking to go to graduate school. And one of the things that I did not want to do was come out of pocket for graduate school. I know I wanted to go get my master's degree. I know I wanted to do some sort of work in the field of strength and conditioning. And I started applying to all these different schools. I heard back from one school, which was Florida State at the time. And when they reached out to me, they had offered me a partial scholarship at the time. And I would have to do work study to kind of like pay off the rest of my schooling to get my master's degree. Now, it sounded good and everything. Florida State was a great school, but it was not what I really wanted. And that part is important too, because a lot of times we settle for something less than what we ultimately desire. Like my desire was to go to graduate school and I wanted to go debt free. But the only offer I was getting at the time was from Florida State. So I'm sitting in the library, I'm looking at schools, I'm writing these letters, and then all of a sudden I hear this like hunch in my spirit that just tells me to apply at the University of Hawaii. I, I never knew they had an opening or anything about that. I didn't even know if they had a strength and conditioning program. I would see the team, every now and again on ESPN, but that's all I knew about the University of Hawaii. But there was this heavy, heavy hunch sitting in my spirit saying, send your resume to the University of Hawaii. And in my mind, I'm like, what? Like Hawaii? Like, why would I do that? But my spirit was like, send your doggone resume to the University of Hawaii. All right. So I looked up University of Hawaii. I looked up, if they had a strength and conditioning program. They actually did. I sent it to the coach. It was like 3 days later. One of my friends and I, we were on this church softball league, and we were going to play softball. So we had just pulled into the parking lot, and my cell phone rings, and it was a coach from the University of Hawaii. Shout out to Coach Heffernan. You are the man, sir. But yeah, he called me. He was like, hey, this is, Coach Heffernan at the University of Hawaii. And we got your resume. And, did you know that we had an opening? And I was like, no, I didn't know you had an opening at all. I just randomly sent my resume to you. And, that's all I know. I had no idea. Well, they had someone leaving. The guy that was there, he was going to graduate, and they had a vacancy that was coming open. So he informed me to, send him this video of me doing different exercises. At the time, I was doing my internship at the University of Tennessee. And so I went in the next day, all ecstatic, excited. I was like, hey, Coach so-and-so, I got, a call from the University of Hawaii last night. I have to make this video really quick. And I got to send it to him by this day. He's like, you got a call from University of Hawaii? I was like, yeah. He's like, did you know that? I was like, no, I had no idea they had an opening. And so we made the video, sent the video off. Fast forward, we're going back. It was like a couple weeks later. We're going back to the softball game again. Softball league, church softball league again. It was on a Wednesday. And it's Coach Heffernan. He called again. He's like, hey, got your video, took a look at your video. Thought you did a really great job, and want to offer to see if you want to come and coach at the University of Hawaii. I was like, yeah, that would be awesome. I was just shocked. And he's like, well, are any other schools talking to you? I was like, yeah, I'm talking to Florida State. But they're going to give me a partial scholarship, and I got to do work study to pay off the other part. And Coach Herman was like, well, we can give you a full scholarship and you'll get a work sniping from the weight room, and you also get a sniping from the kinesiology department, which is I just had to teach a couple classes, and so that little small hunch that I listened to led to a big explosive blessing. It like I said, it always came to some level of prosperity, which I got a full scholarship and I was able to get paid. Um, wasn't a lot, but I didn't have to come out of pocket. Peace. I had peace about it. Um, it was on short notice. It was in December, and I had to be there in January. Another part of the story is sidetrack. I had just re-upped on my lease at this apartment complex I was staying in. I was living in East Tennessee still. And I was like, dang, I just re-upped on my lease. This lady is not going to let me out of my lease. So I was like, God, what am I going to do? Like, I just signed this lease a couple days ago. And there's no way this lady's going to let me out of my lease. So I was like, let me just go talk to her and tell her what's going on. Because it was like December the 13th, maybe. It was like mid-December. That's all I recall. And I had to be in Hawaii by the first week in January. So I go in to the office and I talked to this lady, landlord. It's like, hey, ma'am, like, I'm in a situation. I just got this scholarship from, University of Hawaii, and I know I just signed my lease, so I wanted to know what I can do to get on my lease or how much I got to pay. She was more excited than I was about me going to Hawaii. She's like, "You're going to Hawaii." She was country lady. "You're going to Hawaii?" I was like, "Yes, ma'am. Like, I'm going to get my master's degree in X, Y, and Z." She's like, "That's so." She's like, "Darling, don't even worry about. I'm going to let you out of your lease. That's fantastic news." And I was just like, "What? This lady's gonna let me out of this year lease I just signed?" Like, but she let me out of it. And that just goes to show, like, wait, I gotta backtrack. The plane ticket, I can't skip that part. So, I had to find a plane ticket. You know, I didn't know anything about Hawaii. I had to find a plane ticket. Here I am. I'm fresh out of like undergrad school, broke. I probably had about $400 or $500 to my name, and I was like, man, I gotta find a plane ticket. It's gonna run me at least a couple $1,000s. Well, at the time, back in the day, cheap tickets was like the spot you go and find your plane tickets on. Cheap tickets. So I look for a ticket from Nashville to Hawaii. I found a one-way ticket to Hawaii for like under $300. It was like 305 and some change. So, so I booked this ticket. I pack up all my stuff, go back to Murfreesboro, and my parents are like, "Oh, are you scared?" I was like, "Nah, I ain't scared." Blah blah blah. I probably had like, I don't know, at the $300, probably had like $200 in my bank account, but I was never without money out there. I never went hungry. I never went without a roof over my head. And I always tell people I left with $200 and came back with a master's degree and more money in my pocket than I left. So that just proves my point that when you listen to that intuition, despite the fear you may be going through, despite all the negative voices that you may hear, despite all the logical reasons as you why you shouldn't do a certain thing or whatever the case may be, like if your spirit is telling you to do something, do it in a positive way. If it's telling you to do something, it may not line up with all the logics, you know what I mean? But do it. If you feel at peace about it, do it. If you look at stories all throughout the Bible, nothing, all the miracles that Jesus performed and God performed, like nothing lined up logically. Uh, Example, Moses in the Red Sea. David and Goliath. Like, those are two prime examples that on paper, the people at the Red Sea, the Israelites, were supposed to drown. David wasn't supposed to be Goliath on paper, but they both did it because they listened to their intuition, their voice that God told them, like, go now, do this now. And we all get that. When you hear that, when you feel that intuition and it's telling you to go now, do it now, go after that job, go after that relationship, go out, buy that car, buy that house, like listen to it. You know what I mean? And everything else will line up. Like Dr. King said, don't try to figure out all the pieces to the puzzle. Just take that first step. And through your faith, God will open up other doors that will help you get to that point where you need to be. Now, on the flip side of that, when we go against our spirit, our intuition, the same outcomes occur, but in a negative way. The prosperity part, there's always some level of significant financial loss through your act of disobedience. The spirit told you, your intuition told you, don't buy that house, don't buy that car, don't marry that person. All right. Peace. There's a lack of peace. You tend to not have peace. There's a constant replay of the thoughts of something told me not to do that. All right. I've had that before. I'm pretty sure some of y'all had that before. Protection. When we expose ourselves to physical, emotional, or spiritual harm, there's always a built-in consequence to a decision. What I mean by a built-in consequence. For example, if I jump off of a building, okay, gravity is equal to everyone. All right, if I jump off a building with no parachute, if I hit the ground, I expose myself to the chances of being hurt or dying. It goes for anybody if you jump off of a building. So that's what I mean by a built-in consequence. If you rob something or rob a store, the built-in consequence is you're going to jail. So that's a given. Um, God is, but the good thing is God is a God of second chances, and sometimes it takes us failing and picking ourselves up again in order to take that step of faith forward. You know what I mean? What do I mean by that? Once we've taken that step back from our lack of faith, then it's like, okay, let me get up, dust myself off. All right, let me take this first step of faith because I don't want to experience that again. What I just experienced of not listening to their spirit. So I'm going to take this first step of faith and see what the outcome is going to be now. So that's what I mean by that. Um, I know a good example of this is one of my best friends um, told me a story about when they got married once before, and I'm pretty sure they don't mind me sharing this story, but uh, this person said there was a heavy, 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 heavy tug on them not to marry the person. And they felt like they had to because, they've sent out the invitations. The wedding day was approaching and all these things that they've done leading up to this wedding. And this person had told me like the closer they got to the wedding day, the more their intuition tugged on them about not marrying this person. And I was like, well, why didn't you do it? Like, why didn't you not listen to your intuition? And it was like, well, we've already sent the invitations. Their family already came up. My family already came up. We spent all this money. So the circumstances and the external factors spoke more loudly than the internal factors. And ultimately, they ended up getting married. And years later, they ended up getting divorced. But the person was like, yeah, I knew this was going to happen because I knew in my spirit I wasn't not supposed to marry this person, but I did it out of fear and just because we had spent all this money, and I didn't want to, disappoint or call everything off. And I was like, damn, like that was deep. And I really admire this person because they acknowledged the fact that, if they would have listened to their intuition, they were giving me they were dropping gems on me about, because I was asking them questions about getting married, and they shared their story with me. And they told me, like, hey, if your spirit's telling you not to be with someone or do something, then don't do it. And I was like, damn, I really appreciate you sharing it with me. Like, you didn't even have to be that vulnerable with me, but you did. And it really opened my eyes up about listening to my intuition a lot more. So pay attention to your intuition. Like I told you before, pay attention to the signs that God and the universe presents to you. There are signs that God will give you. If you're in tune to your spirit, He will show you um, what it is that you're supposed to be doing. Whether it's through a random person coming up and saying like some sort of positive words to you, hearing something on the radio, um, reading something through nature, whatever the case may be, He will give you signs about that. And like I said, I go back to the Hawaii thing. There was always little small signs that I reflected back on that God was showing me. Hey, you're about to go to Hawaii. Anytime I would never ever leave my television on. Whenever I have a football game on Saturdays in college, well, I left my TV on twice, two times, and both times, um, the University of Hawaii football games were on when I came back into my dorm room. And some people may be like, well, that's a coincidence, blah, blah, blah. But I don't believe in coincidences. I believe that everything happens for a reason. Um, and what's the chances of twice, both times Hawaii games were on? Both times. So I don't think that's just coincidental. Those were signs that God was telling me, like, hey, I'm prepping you for Hawaii. Another sign was that I met one of my best friends um, during that time, and they were from Hawaii. And so, like, we started talking about, I was asking him, like, hey, what does Hawaii look like? X, Y, and Z, and blah, blah, blah. And, I had built a relationship with someone that I didn't even know that um, would give me insight about the place I was about to go to next. So always pay attention to the little small signs. And if you're not sure, if you pray to God, ask Him to give you signs. He will. The universe will show you signs as well. So just be in tune to your surroundings, and look at the little consistent small signs that are constant that you see day in, day out. What else do I have for y'all tonight? Uh, in closing, I told you I wasn't going to be long. Real quick. In closing, I want you to think about this. This is your homework. Okay. What is your intuition speaking to you about? All right. What is your intuition? Write this down. Speaking to you about. Are you listening or are you ignoring it? That's the next question. Are you listening or are you ignoring your intuition? Are you responding in faith or are you retreating in fear? Are you responding in faith or are you retreating in fear? All right, I'm about to get deep. I'm about to hit y'all in the face at 1:48 at 9 a.m. in the morning with this question. What is it that you know that you're supposed to be doing or not doing that your spirit is tugging at you so heavily that it's almost like as if you can't sleep at night? Can I ask you that question again? What is it that you know you're supposed to be doing or not doing that your spirit is tugging at you so heavily that it's keeping you up at night? Let me reword it that way. All right. Questions again. The three questions I asked for is What is your intuition speaking to you about? Are you listening to it? Or are you ignoring it? Are you responding in faith? Or are you retreating in fear? That's question 3. And question 4 is, what is it that you know you're supposed to be doing or not doing that your spirit is tugging at you so heavily that it's keeping you up at night? All right, those are the 4 questions I want you to write down, answer those questions on your own time, and hopefully you get some insight for your own personal life. Remember this: you don't have to have it all figured out. Just trust that God is with you. Seek guidance and take the first step of faith. Remember that you don't have to have it all figured out. Trust in God, seek guidance, and take the first step in faith. All right? Trust your intuition. It can be the breakthrough, or it can be your hindrance to your next blessing. It can be the breakthrough, or it can be your hindrance to your next blessing. All right? I hope y'all enjoyed this short episode of the Jam Session. It's your man, Hollywood Hathaway. And remember, like we always say, stay fit, fix your finances, and keep the faith. Y'all see my eyes? It's time for me to go to bed. I love y'all. Y'all have a good night. See you next time.